How's the weather in Seattle, Alex?
It is a dystopian nightmare. The smoke in the air is like I've never seen before.
Okay, Dave is trying to call in as well, but we've got enough for quorum.
Yep. Yes, we do.
Okay, so Cindy, do you want me to read this out, or are you going to?
I think just go through the proper process, Robert. Call the meeting to order. We're going to approve the agenda, and then we'll move through the items. The agenda's on the screen.
Okay, so thank you everybody for joining this special meeting. I'll call it to order. Can I have an approval of the agenda? A motion to approve the agenda, please.
I move to approve the agenda.
Seconded.
Alex,
Seconded.
All in favor? Okay, great. We're going to go through the minutes.
There aren't any minutes. It's just the item as we spoke about, Chair Jackson, just the funding opportunity for the floating bridge.
Okay, so on our last meeting, we spoke about the floating bridge. We received a quote that was for close to $45,000. At that time, we decided to not pursue it. Sorry, I'm just getting text here from Dave. He's trying to dial in, but he can't get in. Anyway, so I went back to the township. We had a meeting on this a few weeks ago. You'll remember that we had received some funding opportunity that Bridget at the township had applied for us for. So there is some funding available. The feeling from the township, and correct me if I'm wrong, Yvette or Cindy or Matt, is that the floating bridge needs to be repaired. It needs to be replaced as quickly as possible. It could be or is a liability. And so we're looking at getting some additional quotes to compare to the original quote that we got back in August, just so that we can have some idea to be able for comparison purposes. But I think the real thrust of this special meeting this afternoon is to get a motion in place, if the committee is in favor, to look at using some of our funds from the $16,000 donation that we received from the Barron Cowan Foundation a couple of years ago. You'll remember that Barron Cowan donated, I believe, $16,219 to the Millbrook Valley Trails. Dave D'Agostino had a lot to do with that, so thank you again, Dave, even though you're not on the line. And Mr. Cowan had not earmarked the funds for any specific purpose, but had mentioned that it would be nice to see it go to a fairly large project. So what the township is suggesting, and Cindy, Yvette, or Matthew could elaborate on this, is that we, from that $16,219, we look at taking 10,000 of those dollars and putting it towards the cost of a bridge. Matthew?
Yeah, so I'll give an updated rundown because there's been a few numbers moving around. So I'll try to be quick. So when staff investigated the status of the reserve, there's actually $19,843 in the reserve right now. And there's also a balance of approximately, let's just round it to say approximately $3,500 remaining in this year's budget. The funding that Bridget applied for, there's a remainder somewhere between $10,000 and $13,000. But the caveat and the issue with those funds is they need to be allocated / spent by the end of December. So that's why we're in a bit of an emergency here calling the special meeting to discuss, because if there is upwards of $13,000 available, we have some significant contribution as well. Well, we can go to the township in our last meeting and discuss utilizing reserves to make up the difference to get this project theoretically done this winter. But we need to strike while the iron's hot, and we need the approval of the board and the committee to utilize those funds potentially. If something were to happen or it doesn't work out, then so be it. If the council votes against moving forward with the project, that is a foreseeable outcome. But I think it's a unique opportunity that we can get all of these alignments of funding in a row. So I think my suggestion was, because of, to try to make it as a less significant financial burden from the township as possible, that we try to, carve out if we have the 3,500 left, that means we're close to $23,000 in funds just sitting idle. And I don't believe we have much in the way of additional expenses outstanding for the year. So in talking with Yvette, the suggestion was that we try to get an allocation of approximately $19,000 of our funds. That keeps about, my suggestion is that we utilize all of the remaining unused budget for this year, retain approximately $3,000 or so into the reserve budget, and then utilize that next year with a portion of the $6,000 we annually receive from the township. If we end up going with the original quote, which involved us being responsible for the installation of a few of the floorboards on the bridge work. So we estimated that I think was in the ballpark of $5,000. So if we had 35 or 3,000 to 3,500 and change, we could utilize potentially a few $1,000s of next year's budget, and that project could be done and dusted and ready to go for all of next season, which would be a really great achievement if all things align. But we need to have a motion from this board to allocate those funds if it's a possibility. If something were to change or we get a better bid and we don't need all of those monies, well, we can go, we just need to allocate them as a committee to that project if it can get done in the timeline. And if not, it can still be carried forward and done in the next year, the next iteration of the committee. It's just a unique opportunity that we wanted to get everyone, or at least pursue as best we can on the tight timeline that we have. And thanks for all yourselves available today to have that discussion. So that's the high level summary. Yvette, you want to correct any of my math if I'm mistaken?
No, I think through chair to the committee members, yes, you have $19,843.25 in a reserve allocated, and you currently right now unspent as of currently today, you have $3,787.50 left in your operating budget. So what Matthew and I were speaking of just briefly is, if we utilize $3,000 of your current budget, of your operating budget, which we're left the 787 left in your budget, and utilize the 16,000 and left the remaining in your reserve budget, we would then draft a report at a staff level. We'll draft a report, take it to council on November 7th. Chris is frantically trying to get additional quotes so that we have, because our purchasing policy does require at least minimum of 3 quotes if possible. So we're trying frantically to get quotes in that will either be up or down, and whatever we end up with, hopefully down. We will take a report, and we will ask for the township to cover off all the remaining costs and try to get that done so that we can move forward and utilize not only the remaining grant money of $13,445, the reserve money operating, and then we'll end up, I'll have to ask council for permission to take money out of parkland reserve. And that will be in the report going before council on the 7th. So again, I'm not sure, if we'll get approval or not, but I think it's for a staff position, we were willing to try and draft a report to get it before council for consideration.
Through you, Chair Jackson, just a quick question. I see we have a guest that's joined us. Can I get that guest to identify themselves and I'll just rename them? They've called in on the phone. Do you see that, Chair Jackson?
Yes, that's Dave D'Agostino. Dave?
Yeah, that must be me. I just called in a few minutes ago.
No
Thanks,
problem.
Dave.
I'll just rename you.
So can I make a comment?
Yep.
So at our meeting last week, we had agreed that of our donation, the township was going to ask for $10,000 out of that donation, and now you're asking for 16,000.
Yeah, so you are correct, Mr. Chairman. We did discuss the 10, and that's not taking that away from you at all. That is correct. But when we realized that there's 19,000 in there, the suggestion that we're asking the deputy mayor and staff is, would you consider going back to the 16,000? It's an option. You don't have to.
The logic behind, sorry, Yvette, the logic behind that on and I'll take the heat for that one, is that it is virtually the totality of the Cowan donation, which was to be, as you mentioned, Rob, dedicated towards a capital project, and it doesn't cannibalize the entire amount of the reserves. We still have the other amount. set aside for if it's the boards or not. Like you said, we still have to finalize the quote and all of that stuff. So we're not bleeding the reserves beyond what the Cowan contribution was. And then we're using the remainder of the unspent monies from this year towards it as well. So.
Okay, so my point is that if Ms. Page is going to ask me to present the motion to the committee, I should have had the correct figures in front of me, not from what we discussed last week.
Yep, I just had that conversation today, Rob, but I take responsibility for that. Sorry about that.
And please, through you, Mr. Jackson, or Chairman Jackson, to the committee, if you choose not to do the 16,000 for whatever reason that you might have already, committee has talked about utilizing for other projects as well, I'm fine with that. It doesn't matter in the aspect. I know that Deputy Mayor is saying it would show better when we take a report to council. I understand that, but if you choose to stay with the 10, I'll still draft the report and take it forward. Please note that.
Yeah, that's just what I wanted to propose to the group, and you guys can decide whatever you want to allocate to it. But the point was, like I said, we might as well use all of the Cowan donation because it was supposed to go to a capital project, and we're still coming up $10,000 to $12,000 short that we're asking the township to allocate from the Parkland Reserve towards the project to get it done this year. So I thought, well, let's just get all of that contribution towards this project, because I never thought going into the initial meeting that we had with staff that this was going to be a remote possibility with the funding. But in order to capitalize on it, I think we got to push it would be my suggestion to the committee to push in as many chips as we can respectfully. And that was the intention of the donation as far as I understood it. So that's what that's my proposal. It's not necessarily anything from staff. That's just what I think makes the most sense to bridge the gap as far as possible. So.
How much, can I ask the question again? How much is being allocated towards the funding we got?
I think it's the remaining 13,000 and change whatever's left.
Yes, through Chair Jackson, it is 13,000. We have the remaining funding, which came out of RTOA, is $13,445. And if you choose not to support that, which is the committee's right, please know that the monies will be utilized for other because we have to spend it by the end of the year. That's all. And we'll utilize it for another park works, which is fine. But right now we have the option for $13,445 to go towards this particular project is what is being proposed today.
And so you're looking from the committee, you're looking for 16,000 from our donation from the Cowan Foundation and $3,000 from what's left in our budget.
That is correct.
For a total of 19,000, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Is there anything outstanding, Rob, that you can think of that would potentially be, like, we talked about this a couple different times, but the 3787, like, is there any other outstanding bills? Like, I know you're talking about printing a little bit. That's why I was kind of saying save the 787 and just the 3. But if we don't think we're going to use it, then we should just put all whatever. There's no sense in not spending it towards a project as critical as this. So I think we should put every dollar of this budget that if we're not going to use it towards it.
No, well, we still need printing, and that's a fairly safe number to have for printing of the brochures.
Perfect.
We'll need we're out of brochures completely now. We'll need some to get us through the winter.
Perfect.
And can I ask those final figures, because I never heard back from Carly on the remaining budget. The figures that you gave me in terms of what's left in the MVT operating budget, that includes the deduction from the most recent expenses that I submitted 2 weeks ago.
Do you know what the
total? The total of those
Yeah.
expenses should have been less than $150. But as Mr. Graham said, we want to make sure that we have every dollar allocated here.
Do you think we'll need more than 600 for the brochures, Rob?
So I don't see that here, Chairman Jackson. The printout that I have done is of October 19th, so that might not have been processed yet.
Okay, it was certainly submitted well before October 19th, but I understand that may not have gone through the books yet. Okay.
It's not on the printout here yet as of today, like the 19th as of yesterday. So right now, if you chose to support the 3,000, you have $785 in there. less your 100, which is not showing yet.
Okay, so Matt, the last time we ordered brochures was prior to
Yeah.
uh,
The last time we finished them.
well, all this inflation stuff. So
Yeah.
it was around $400 or $500. So I was just giving us a bit of a buffer there.
Well, we'll still have about 3,800 in the reserve as well.
Well, I know,
That's true.
no,
It will.
sorry,
Yeah.
for you need motions to pull out of a reserve
Yeah.
where you spend anything out of an operating. So if you really wanted to do that to make sure you had enough, I'd prefer if you moved it down to 2,800 instead of 3,000, for example.
Yeah. So Rob, if you want, at the end of the day, if 787 isn't enough, we can take an additional 1,000 from the reserve, so we don't need a motion, so we can keep more monies in the existing operating budget for whatever purposes we might want this year. And then just take an extra, like if you wanted to keep 1,787 in the operating budget to have that buffer, then you can take 17,000 from the reserve instead of 16. And then you still have 24 or 27 and change in the reserve.
Okay, well, I'll open it up to the committee. What are people's thoughts?
I'm all for spending the 16,000 on the bridge, not just for the recreational users who want to have a loop from the fairground to the village and who actually use village restaurants and facilities when they're there, but also for the educational aspect, because the teachers would like to be able to take the students along Station Trail to the fairgrounds and do the loop back to the school. So the trail would get much better use. And I think any amount of money from the Cowan Fund that would go toward the bridge would be very well used and very well appreciated. So I think that would be best. And I think as long as we're covering the brochures, I don't imagine there'll be too much in the way of unforeseen expense. The only thing is that we will have to get to the fairground stairs early next spring then with money from the 2023 budget.
Or or additions from the reserve, that the amount that remains.
Mm-hmm.
John, Alex, Dave, any comments?
Do we approximately know what the total cost will be
It was 44,000 or so.
for the first quote?
But Chris is in the process now of trying to get additional ones, but we have no idea of knowing, but we just don't want to have not enough.
Right. Are you, excuse me, Matthew, are you sure that it's 44,000? Because the number, I didn't look at our last meeting notes, but the number in my head is 54,000, but that might be what my contractor is telling me about stuff here.
No, it was in the ballpark. I believe it was just under 45,000. But there was
Yeah.
the comment that that quote might have incorporated us being on the hook for a few of the floorboards to be installed by our own volunteers when we can. I believe that was the case, Rob. But like I said, that's something that might change based on an updated quote or a revised quote or an additional quote. That's why I didn't want to necessarily throw all of the reserve monies away at it in case we needed to make that a priority for next year also. So.
Yeah, so Maureen, the $45,000 was for the base, the removal and the construction of the base of the new bridge. There was a cost of an additional $7,000-ish if we wanted them to put the cedar decking on with their cedar. So we've got enough cedar decking in the yard probably to do it. If not, it's cheaper for us to buy more cedar decking and put it on ourselves. So that was the additional cost that brought it up to about $54,000.
Okay, thanks.
Just while we're on the point, so Chris, I assume you have not received any additional quotes as of yet?
So not as of yet. I did have 2 site visits today, and I will have quotes by next week.
Wonderful. Okay, and did
Yeah,
we
so I will
ascertain
have 2
whether?
more.
Okay, so did we ascertain whether that the original quote from Green Up Services is still valid that we received in August? Because remember, we thought it might be only valid for 30 days.
I will follow up with him. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
We would have to draft the report for November 7th.
Okay. John Frizzle, any thoughts?
I'm interested in hearing what David has to say, because I know he's kind of instrumental in getting that that grant that we or the donation that we had. So, you know, I'm good to go ahead with it if he is, unless he sees any concerns.
No, that's fine with me. I believe that the idea of using that money towards a floating bridge was, I think, played a role in that donation happening. So I think it was essentially by the donor, that was what he had in mind or would like to see with it. So I think that's great. It's more expensive than probably anyone expected, but I think that's okay.
So then maybe what we should do, Robert, to insulate ourselves for the printing is adjust it just slightly. If you're amenable to this, is do 16.5 from the reserve and then do only the 2,500 from the remaining budget to give you an extra $500. So that gives you upwards of $1,200, close to $1,200 for the printing. So that should be a significant buffer. And if we have to theoretically order slightly in less quantity, we can get back to it next year if that makes sense.
Fine. Yeah. I mean, I need somebody on the committee to make the motion. So whatever you guys think.
Yvette, the one question I have is it possible to phrase any motion to just say whatever's left after all receipts are in from the operating budget be directed towards, in addition to the 16,000, be directed towards the project? Or do you need like a final number from us? Because there is a bit of flux, like even if it's, you know, like I just don't want to see money just evaporate from it. Not that it's going to make a difference, but I just didn't know if there was open language you or Cindy might have suggestions on, or do you just want to do it clean at the 19th?
Through you, Chairman Jackson, to the deputy mayor. I think the challenge is we're not sure exactly how much the brochures are going to cost or anything at the time. So when we're writing a report, I prefer to have it clean so I can say, you know, that there's a motion in support of the funds, those funds are, and then the township, I'm going to be asking the township to cover off the additional costs. So
makes sense.
If that's okay with the committee, I'd probably prefer to just say it very clean so you know exactly what you're supporting today.
Okay. So by my math, if you add the 13,445 to the 19,000, you're 32,444, which makes us about 12,000 short. That we'll be asking the township to kick in from the Parkland Reserve towards the project.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I know that Mr. Allison was speaking to one of the people today. So we don't know what those costs are, but if they're, whatever that is, if it's over and under, whatever the scenario is, if it's more than 45,000, depending upon what the quote is today, but they'll complete the work or less, the township, whatever that report will be, it'll be the township covers off the additional costs.
Yeah. So we might not even be on the hook for the boards if, you know, right, because the township would potentially kick it in. So
yeah, and you can keep, yeah, I think that's correct. Keep the monies in the reserves to utilize for whatever other projects you want to do next year.
Yeah.
Because I will let you know that Chris and I talked a lot today with regards to our capital budgets moving forward and liability and some other matters that we have along the trail system that we may be asking for capital funds to improve the trail system in the 2023 budget, over and above your ask for your budget.
Fab. Fabulous.
I'm just doing a quick process here on for the brochures. It looks like we should be able to be under $750 for the number of brochures we need to get us through to the spring.
Through you, Chair Jackson, did you not say we still also have $150 that we're just waiting to have cleared this operating budget as well, correct?
Sorry, say that again.
You had mentioned that we're still awaiting the $150 to clear this budget as well.
Yeah, I guess if it's not been processed yet, yeah, I didn't have any insight into the budget.
That's what.
So the 16 and a half and the 2,500 would work.
Yeah.
That gives us it gives us a few $100s of space. So
That gives you the wiggle room you might need.
Okay. So any other discussion from the committee members, or do we want to create a motion? Don't all talk at once.
committee
I think we
members,
should create a motion, right?
Okay. All right, go ahead.
So I'll put forward the motion. I'm not sure exactly the numbers, the amount that you guys have calculated out, but definitely to put forward the motion to use that money towards the capital project on the bridge.
So we're saying 19,000, correct?
19,000, is that what you finalized on? I know there's a bunch of numbers bouncing back and forth there.
$16,500 from the reserve from the Cowan donation, and then 2,500 from the remaining operating budget to get us to a total of 19,000.
Is that what you've settled on? And that's including the brochures? I know that was the sticking point. Okay,
Well,
The
there'll be
brochures.
there'll be money left over for brochures.
okay.
Need a seconder.
I'll second that.
Okay, do we want to read the motion one more time to be clear, or are we all clear?
Cindy, do you want me to read it?
I can read one if you'd like me to.
Go for it.
The Millbrook Valley Trails Advisory Committee support utilizing $16,500 from the Cowan Millbrook Valley Trails Reserve Fund and an additional $2,500 from the unspent 2022 operating budget, totaling $19,000. If we would like to include the portion of the grant, we can include that in here, or just then we'll just leave it. So that would be the end of it for the repairs to the floating bridge in the Millbrook Valley Trail system. We have a mover, Frizzle, and a secondary Green McDonald's.
And Cindy, did you say repairs, or are we going to say replacement of the floating bridge? Because we're not repairing it.
Okay, replacement it will be.
Well, I think that's fair. Would
Yep.
you say it, Matt, an event? Yeah. I think that might become important from your liability discussions. It's going to be an all new bridge. Okay, everybody good with the motion? Understand it? Yes? Okay, all in favor?
Yay.
Yay.
Dave D'Agostino?
Yes.
Okay, motion passed.
Sounds great. Could I just ask, when Allison is talking to potential new contractors about their bids, is Chris also mentioning to them the possibility of us helping with removing materials from the area? You know, walking back and forth?
I don't think we'll be involved in removing.
Okay,
That was part of the quote, Maureen, was it? Yeah, it's
Okay.
all going to be done by them. It's
okay.
the only work we'll need to do, and this is again going to be dependent, I'm assuming, on the final contractor we choose. But if we went with Green Up Services, who provided the original and only quote we have thus far, is the only involvement from the committee would be again putting the cedar boardwalk on the actual structure itself.
Okay,
But we may get an all-in price that's more amenable to those costs where we don't have to do it. But again, I think just so the township knows, I think the committee would be more than willing to be able to do that work should it be needed. Okay.
Mhm.
Cindy, Yvette, Matt, anything else you would like from us this afternoon?
No, we just wanted to thank you, Chairman Jackson, and your committee for coming together for this. It was a short notice. We did want to not lose the 13,000, and I did obviously want to go to council before as soon as we possibly could. So we do appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, I reiterate that. Thank you very much, committee, for jumping on such short notice. It's greatly appreciated.
I appreciate you guys bringing it to the attention too. I know that it's something that's very, very important, and that was a goal of our whole committee. So thanks for catching that and making sure it didn't slide away.
Excellent.
Great work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Sorry, I called in right at the end. Anyways,
Before we adjourn, Chair Jackson, you just needed a motion to adjourn. I do see Hillary, you
Oh,
joined, so I added you at
Sorry.
4:33. Unfortunately, you called, but you will be here for adjournment. So you just need an adjournment motion, Chair Jackson.
Yes, sorry, Hillary. Thanks for joining. But yeah, with everything's we had quorum and we passed. So
Okay.
all right. Yes, thank you again. Can I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion.
I will.
John Frizzle, seconded by Alex. All in
Sure.
favor?
I.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank
See you.
you.